Chapter 3 Naremia. 1 week later, I was ready to leave for Naremia. The day before, I had packed some clothes in my suitcase with the help of a maid, and last night I had dyed my hair black. I left my suitcase in my room to head down for breakfast. Someone would come to pick it up while I ate. On my way to the breakfast room, I walked through the entrance hall, where the Mysaulian personnel had put some magazines on the small tables there. Yesterday, the staff had brought in the new magazines for them to read during their breaks. I walked up to the tables and scanned the covers. As I picked them up, I was pretty sure I was on every cover. I was right. All the covers had pictures of me marching with my unit through the streets. The headlines read, "The Ice Queen leads her royal warriors back home. Another victorious win for the Ice Queen." And "The Ice Queen keeps Mysaulia safe." I sighed internally. The press was being so overly dramatic. They created sensation around me on purpose. I had just done what every general did. I had just done my duty. I turned my back to the magazines and focused on the task ahead of me. After I had finished breakfast, a member of the guard entered the room. He wasn't in his uniform, but I still recognized him. I didn't know his name, but I remembered I had seen that face with those brown eyes and that bouncy, light brown hair before. I recognized most of the personnel, council members, and generals because of seeing them around all the time. I grew up with them in passing by the palace a lot, or with them working here. I rarely knew their names, though. I didn't interact with them that much, and when I did, it was so short. We politely exchanged some words, and they introduced themselves and mentioned their names if they were royal. I barely remember the conversation or their names afterwards. Spending a day around the palace, I encountered so many people I could never remember all of them. I was better with faces, since I saw those a few times throughout the day. Please excuse me, madam. I just put your suitcase in the car. If you're finished, I will bring you to the vehicle," he said. I stood up from my chair and walked towards him. "I'm ready." Follow me, please." The guard turned around and led me outside. A shiny, long, black car with tinted windows was parked right in front of the entrance. "I will drive you to the palace in Naremia, madam. I hope I will be able to assist you and protect you during your stay there," he told me. Apparently, the council had decided to send a personal bodyguard with me. He would probably help me with daily tasks as well, by carrying my suitcase for me and making my bed. He was a guard and had received warrior training, so he wasn't used to doing tasks like that. But he'd mostly serve as my protection and would keep an eye on me. It was a reassuring thought I would have someone around me I knew and trusted. "Thank you. What's your name?" My name is Carl, madam." We had reached the car now. Carl opened the back door of the vehicle for me and let me get into the black leather seat. "Thank you, Carl," I said when I was seated. He slightly bowed his head and closed the door. He took his place behind the wheel in the front seat and started the car. The engine didn't produce any sound since it was fully electric, so the whole drive was silent. I saw the landscape fly by as we drove through Mysaulia. Carl only slowed down at the border with Naremia. The guards on both sides of the border let us pass slowly without making us stop. Since cars were rare, both the Mysaulian and Naremian guards on their respective borders knew only the elite classes used them, so they didn't bother to stop them. I looked at the Naremian guards as we drove past them very slowly. They tried to see who was sitting in the back seat, but even with their enhanced eyesight, they couldn't see through the tinted windows. Hybrids had a better vision than humans, but even that didn't make a difference. They just stared right at me without being able to see me. Carl was able to drive faster again after we had passed the border, so we quickly arrived at the palace of Naremia. The gates leading to the palace were wide open. There were guards there, but they just let us pass. They didn't even request for the car to stop. I had thought this would be more difficult. Why would they leave their gates wide open? I'd expected that they would at least ask for some form of identification. The king of Naremia had perhaps asked his personnel to let me pass without any problems. After all, it had been him who had requested the Mycalian Council to send a diplomat. Carl stopped the car in front of the huge driveway leading to the entrance of the palace. He got out of the vehicle first and then opened the back door to let me out as well. I examined the area. The lawns around the palace had a nice green color and some colorful flowers were growing on the grass, but the rest was pretty bland. The building itself was impressive with its many pointy towers, but I thought it was missing some color. Everything was gray. The walls, the stairs, and the fountain standing in the middle of the driveway, which led to the entrance. The fountain had some statues spitting out water, and I liked its design, but overall, this wasn't really a happy place. The Mycalian palace, on the other hand, was entirely white and really stood out. The Mycalian palace was also way bigger than the Naremian one. The guards waiting at the palace doors were staring at me, which I found weird. I didn't feel I had dressed strangely. I was just wearing a white suit, and under my white blazer I wore a black blouse. I had dressed in the style of a businesswoman. Is there something wrong with my style, Carl? I asked Carl. I don't believe so, madam. I don't think it will be a good idea to use that title. They aren't supposed to know who I am. Oh, right, I'm sorry, madam. I had forgotten about that. What would you like me to call you? I assume I will go under my third and fourth name, so just call me Miss Perrault. As you wish, Miss Perrault. Hopefully he would be able to keep calling me that during my stay. Otherwise, we might get into an awkward situation we would need to explain. I walked a bit in front of Carl as we covered the distance between where he had stopped the car and the stairs leading to the palace doors. The guards opened the doors for us, and I could so obviously smell the distinctive aroma of a hybrid on them. The scent of blood mixed with faint whiff of a wolf. Carl carried my suitcase inside, and the doors closed immediately behind us. I think you can put my suitcase here in the hallway for a bit, Carl, I said to him. He dragged it to the side of the entrance hall and put it down. He went to stand next to it, holding his arms next to his body and scanning the room. This was typical guard behavior. He appeared relaxed and at ease, but he was very alert and could respond to threats at a moment's notice. He had a good view over the whole area and was close enough to me while still keeping his distance. A small gray-haired woman entered the hall. She was dressed neatly, but not like a noblewoman. I could tell she was human. 60% of the population in Naremia was human, while the other 40% were all vampire-werewolf hybrids. You're late. That isn't tolerated here, she informed me harshly. I raised both eyebrows. I hadn't expected this abrupt greeting. I had no idea I had arrived late. I had left right after breakfast, but the ride had taken up a lot of the day. It was now early in the afternoon. The woman came to stand right in front of me. She was clearly too much in my personal space, but what she did next crossed all lines. She grabbed my arm and pulled me with her. I was just utterly shocked. I couldn't even utter a sound. Carl wanted to react, but I looked at him quickly, my expression telling him to stay put. The woman was old, small, and human. She wasn't really a threat. I could handle her if I wanted to, but I allowed her to drag me with her. She led me to the throne room where about 20 girls were standing in a half circle. They all stared at me like I was trash. The woman pushed me in between two girls. I could tell the girls were human. I didn't smell the mix of blood and wolf on them. The girl on my left smelled like flowers, and the girl on my right smelled sickly sweet. Perfume. They had used perfume. I frowned. What was going on? I noticed all the girls wore dresses. Some were really nice and elegant with different colors and designs, while others wore plain and simple dresses. What had I gotten into? Right when I opened my mouth to protest, actually just to say anything really, The King of Naremia, Harry Petrus, entered the room. I recognized him from pictures which were several years old, but he hadn't aged a day. As a hybrid, he didn't age. He walked past the girls with his hands behind his back and stopped at each of them, examining them thoroughly with his light blue eyes. He kept his face neutral, but I was trained and raised as a royal. I even lived a royal life, so I could tell when he was displeased or when he approved of a girl. He finally reached me and scanned me from head to my toes with his eyes. I didn't like this at all. I was being assessed like I was merchandise for sale. But I had to hold my tongue. I knew I couldn't speak to the king before he had spoken to me first. No dress? It's risky to dress in your own style. You've broken the rules. I heard the other girls holding their breath. This was the first thing he said. I could tell the king also saw me as trash, just like the girls earlier. Please forgive me if I'm being blunt or rude, but there has been made a mistake, Your Majesty. I'm not supposed to be part of this, I answered as politely as possible. I made sure I sounded like I respected him. He raised one eyebrow. To be part of the selection, to be chosen for it, is a huge honor. You're a disgrace by trying to get out of it with your excuses, he said harshly. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I don't know anything about a selection. I was sent by the Mysalian Council as a diplomat. I heard someone gasping for air, but the king was also taken aback. His surprise didn't last long. He recovered quickly. You've arrived at the worst possible moment, and you're not wearing your star. Yeah, it was clear I had arrived at the worst possible moment. I was also wishing now I had been wearing my golden star. Was my arrival not announced, then? I asked. It was, but the letter didn't say what day or time you'd arrive. My apologies for the confusion. Sabine will take you away. The situation had been handled now. The King of Naremia continued examining the other girls, and the old woman who had dragged me here came towards me. Apparently she was the one called Sabine. The other girls all stared at me with huge eyes. Everyone knew my Saulian diplomats were hunters, and the king had also mentioned my golden star. The hybrid girls and some human girls feared me, while a few other human girls secretly admired me and were jealous of me. I wasn't really sure if the admiration and jealousy were because I was a Mysalian hunter, or because I didn't need to participate in the selection. I was still not sure what it was. I hoped it wouldn't be a sacrifice. I'm sorry for earlier. I had confused you with a participant. Sabine apologized to me when she stood in front of me. Yeah, that's okay. I've just arrived at a terrible time, I answered, and I even forced a slight smile. Indeed. Please follow me. She signed for me to follow her and walked a bit in front of me to the other end of the room. But apparently I had a very unlucky day today, because right at that moment, the Crown Prince of Naremia, Oscar Petrus, entered the room. He stood right in front of Sabine, blocking the way, and his gaze was pointed towards me. While looking at him, I noticed he resembled his dad a lot. Physically, they were both the same age, forever stuck at the age of 18. Sabine slightly bowed her head and greeted the prince. Your Highness, she said. What's going on, Sabine? The prince asked. I'm guiding this lady here to the guest quarters. Why? Isn't she supposed to participate in the selection? I only count 24 girls without her. I just had enough of the whole misunderstanding now. I was losing my patience. My name is Marian Perrault, and I'm a diplomat sent by the Mysalian Council to negotiate the demands for a peace treaty, I said, using my third and fourth names. I knew it was rude to answer without being spoken to first, but I didn't really care about that. I also hadn't spoken to him in a polite and respectful way. I'm aware of that, but now you're here right at this moment, You can replace the missing girl. Participate in the selection, and then we can negotiate the demands and requirements to start discussing a peace treaty. He sounded like he wouldn't tolerate any protest. He just walked past us. To him, the matter had been handled. Only he was forgetting one very important thing. You do know I'm a hunter, right? And the king said. He stopped in his tracks. I had spoken to his back, and I hadn't used his title. He turned around to face me again with a look in his eyes that could kill. I'm aware of the Mycelian system. After all, I'm the Crown Prince of Naremia. He interrupted. Then he turned towards Sabine. Has the king given you a direct order? No, she said, hesitating. Well, then this girl will still participate. That's a direct order. The selection will teach her a few manners. He had spoken out every word clearly to make sure I knew he wouldn't tolerate any disobedience. He turned his back to me again, walked towards the thrones on the platform at the other end of the room, and sat on one of them. I could only stare at him. I watched every one of his movements, imprinting them in my memory. I would never forget this moment. I could kill that hybrid right now. I hated him so much. He was a stuck-up, spoiled brat. Right now, I could drive a stake through his heart, which would kill him, if there had been any weapons in my proximity. But I would never be able to kill him. That would lead to a war, one Mycelia could better avoid. The real threats were the demon-like creatures from the Great Darkness and the Great Darkness itself. So I didn't really have any other choice than to swallow my own pride and accept the deal. I had to participate in the selection, whatever that might be.